me just say a little something about representation, because the thing that really bothers me is this ongoing debate around identity politics. It was a charge that was lobbied against me throughout my congressional campaign. So first of all, we need leadership parity and representation in government, but we don't need it so that we can pat ourselves on the back about how progressive and evolved we are. It's not about, cute hashtags. Right. Representation matters because when you have a diversity of perspective, opinion, and thought around the table, it informs the policy making. And so when people say they have a problem with, my unapologetically saying that I'm going to fight for women, that I'm going to fight for Black folk, that bothers me because it's not something that I'm saying exclusively. Mm-hmm. When Speaker Pelosi says, I came to Congress to advocate for the children, do adults get up in arms and say, what about me?
Right.
Okay, so, the thing is that if you're a veteran and you say, I'm going to fight for veterans, no one takes issue with that. If you were a laborer and you say, I'm going to fight for workers' rights, or you're in the recovery community, you say, I'm going to fight the recovery community. Only women are asked to be apologists about affirming their very humanity and dignity and rights. And only Black folks, to defend fighting for the preservation of us. Now, right. The top line is people will say the best policies are data informed. Okay, so when I give you the data and I tell you in my district, the Massachusetts 7th, the Aryan median household income for a Black family is $8 compared to, what is the number here? $247,000 for a white family.
Wow.
Whoa.
Okay, in my district. And in a 3-mile radius from Cambridge, which is the home of Harvard and MIT, to Roxbury, which is one of the Blackest parts of the district that I represent, in a 3-mile radius, life expectancy drops by 30 years. And median household income by $50,000. Now, that didn't just happen in the ether. These inequities and disparities, and they happened long before that man descended an escalator at Trump Tower. Mm-hmm. These inequities and disparities were created by a tsunami of hurt through policy making. And so when I say, well, if you agree that the best policies are data informed, and here's the data,
right.
And I'm saying that I'm going to work to improve the unjust outcomes for Black folks, that does not mean to the exclusion of anyone else.
Right.
Because I do believe our destinies and our freedoms are tied. And so I'll give you a final demonstration of the power of representation. Well, two really quickly. So I'm the first woman of color elected, first Black woman to the Boston City Council. Now, people think of Boston as a very progressive place, and it is in many ways. Innovation, and it's a mecca of higher education and learning. And we were the first for marriage equality and healthcare reform. But I'm the first Black woman, the first woman of color to serve on the Boston City Council. It took over 100 years. And, people ask me before you were elected, who was hurt? Was it women or Black folks? I'm like, everybody.
All right.
Government is stronger and more effective when it reflects and represents the citizenry, that it serves. And so I ran on a platform saying I'm running to save girls. And folks were like, well, go run a nonprofit. That's not the job of government, okay? But because of my own lived experiences, being raised in a single-parent household, my father being incarcerated off and on for some 14 years, being a survivor of a decade of childhood sexual abuse and later campus sexual assault, and because of work that I had done in my own time with girls, I was any organization committed to the safety, development, and health and wellness of women and girls. I was a motivational speaker. I was a volunteer. I served on those boards. I did that work. And I would give all those girls my cell phone number. And they would call me at all hours. And they say, Miss Ayanna, I don't have feminine hygiene products. Can I borrow some? Miss Ayanna, my boyfriend's pressuring me to have sex. I'm not ready. Can you help me? Miss Ayanna, I just came out as queer to my family and they kicked me out. Can I stay with you? I think I'm pregnant. Can I take a test at your house? My uncle's making me feel uncomfortable. I know you went through that. Can you help me? And I said, okay, this isn't sustainable. I'm going to continue to open my arms, my heart, and my home as long as I can. But it was proof to me that government was failing, that we needed gender-specific and responsive programming and protocols for girls. That the narrative was so dominated about how Black and brown boys are at improving risk, and they are. So let me just say this, because in my home community, when I ran for city council saying I'm running to fight for girls, they would say, but the boys are the ones dying. And I would say, right, but this is not the oppression Olympics.
Right, and you can do
okay?
both.
And so our destinies and our freedoms are tied. And what about the women raising these boys? trauma begets trauma, violence begets violence.
Hurt people,
hurt people hurt people. And I'm like, this isn't about are we our brother's keeper or our sister's keeper. It's both. Our destinies and our freedoms are tied, and we are failing girls. So here's my point to the power of representation. So I get elected to the Boston City Council. Our first budget cycle, every city, department, and agency is coming before us, and I'm asking them, what about the girls? And, their answers are, a little bit more than monosyllabic. The next budget cycle, they come back with binders, multicolored, cross-tabbed. Do you know why that is? Because they knew I was going to ask the question. And that is the power of representation, that someone is at the table that is going to ask the question. And then the other example I would give on the power of representation and identity is I have a colleague from California, Katie Porter. She serves on the Financial Services Committee with me, brilliant law professor. She and I both kind of, went at Ben Carson, the Secretary of HUD. And she is a single mom of 3 children and a survivor of domestic violence. And during the Violence Against Women Act reauthorization, she introduced an amendment to cite economic abuse as a form of abuse towards women, because we all know anecdotally that many victims will stay with an abuser out of economic codependence. But that was never an amendment authored. It never became law until Katie Porter brought that. Now, I am Black and a woman and unapologetically proud to be both, but that is not the totality of my identity. I was a caregiver to my mother in her cancer battle. May she rest in power. I am a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a survivor. I'm a lawmaker. And so this is why we need parity, leadership parity, and representation in government, so that someone calls the question at the table.